Hey everyone, in my last video we talked about for loops, and you will be seeing those used again in this tutorial, just to kind of reiterate. But the main focus of this tutorial is to talk about arrays, which is a variable type I kind of didn't really, I kind of just skimmed over in our first video. I just mentioned it, I never actually showed you it. So we're just going to spend this tutorial talking about arrays and showing how they work and talking about what they are really. And arrays are very useful in programming. They will be used in tandem with loops in most cases. It allows you to store large amounts of data by creating multiple rows of one variable. So you'll have like a height variable, but it has multiple rows. So like the first row could be the height of one person, and the next one would be height of a different person, and so on and so forth. It's used a lot, basically. So as you can see, I have a very bare bones project here with only a button. You can easily make this, so just I guess do that yourself, because I'm assuming at this point you can do that. Let's go ahead and click on our button here. And basically what this program is going to do is, I didn't want to go real fancy on arrays because it's very simple stuff. So it's just going to pop up a bunch of data, and I'll show you in the code how you can make arrays. And then it'll pop up information based on these arrays in a message box. So normally you would create a bunch of variables in order to hold a lot of different data. So for instance, if you needed 5 different height variables for 5 different people, you would do something like int height 1 is equal to 5 or something, or 4 or something like that, and then int height 2 is equal to 6 or whatever variable it is, int height 3 is equal to 7, something like that. And basically you would just create variables in a row to compensate for the variables you need. But this is not exactly the most code-friendly approach. So we are going to be using arrays. And the way you create an array is you give it a type like you would normally do. However, this time you use open and then close bracket. This shows that you want an array. You want rows of data. And then you name it. In this case, I'll call it my array. Okay, so it doesn't have any value right now. It doesn't even know how many rows it's supposed to use. We've just created it and it's there. So how do we create an instance of it where it has a certain number of rows? Well, we just say my array is equal to new, because we are creating an instance of it. It's technically an object, which is part of object-oriented programming, which will be in a later tutorial. And then we say int again. That way we know that this new instance is in fact an int. And then we give it multiple rows. In this case, I'll just use 5 to keep it simple. So we now have 5 rows of my array. How do we access these rows? Well, I'll show you. Basically, we would just say my array and then 0 or whatever row it is. Rows always begin with 0 whenever you allocate them using this method up here. Rows always begin with 0 when they are numeric and in order. They never begin with 1. That's a common mistake people will make when they first start creating arrays. They always start with 0. This has been the same for most programming languages I've seen. That includes PHP and a few others. So my array 0, we'll set that to 1 or something like that. And you can always say my array 1 is equal to 2 or whatever. And basically that's how you would set its value. Now the way this comes in handy for many programmers is it allows you to use loops in a new way now. So if you have multiple rows of things, you can loop through and then use the count variable in place of this number right here, so that you can output information dynamically. Now just for an example of that, let's create a basic for loop. And in it, we will be creating a new variable, which is an int of I, and we'll set it equal to 0. For our condition, we will say if I is less than actually, we need to create another variable up here. We are going to be using a function, or rather a method, that is intrinsic within C#, which is count. And it basically counts the number of rows that an array has. So we'll create an int called count, and we'll set it equal to myArray.count. Now this count, this count function, or method, my bad, like I said, is it just counts the number of rows this array has. It's an intrinsic method within C#. So then we just, for our condition, check whether I is less than count. And then each time we're going to have I add 1 on for each time this for loop is executed, or looped rather. So we've got our for loop. And what if we want to output 1 row each time this for loop goes, or each time it fires off? So basically we can use I, like I said, in place of the number that we would normally say for my array. So let's create another variable called message, much like the one we used in our last tutorial. String message is equal to, and then make it blank for now. Now we'll just say message plus equal to. Remember, plus equal to adds on a string to a currently existing string. And we'll add on the value of my array, I. So, you may be wondering, well, my array I doesn't have a value. Well, that's true. I just remembered that. But before I do that, I want this to have a new line in it because I don't really particularly like an unformatted, just a straight one-line thing. So we'll give each row of my array, we'll give it a value of, say, I plus 3, something like that. So it'll start off as 3, 4, 5, because remember it starts off with 0, so it'll be 3 plus 0, 3 plus 1, 3 plus 2, you know. So we now have given our array a value for each time it fires off. So the first time it'll be my array 0 is equal to 0 plus 3. And the next time it fires off, it'll be my array 1 is equal to 1 plus 3. And each time it fires off, it's also going to add a string onto this message right here, which will basically be the value of each row plus a new line. That way it's extended down the page rather than all in one line. So now we're going to need to output that with a message box, the most simple part of this. So if we run our program and we click on this button, we get 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, which is exactly what we expected because there are 5 rows, right? And it'll be 0 plus 3 is 4, 1 plus 3 is 0 plus 3 is 3, 1 plus 3 is 4, 2 plus 3 is 5, and so on and so forth until you reach 7, because 7 is the last one, if I recall. Yeah. Right. So that is basic arrays. Once again, you can set the value of each array by doing something like this, but it's more commonly done through looping. At least that's what the majority of programmers require it for. And of course it can't be a string because it's an integer, but still. Alright, so these arrays can be used a lot in the future. I hope you find interesting new ways to use them using your while loops and for loops, and They can also be pulled from databases, and that's how you would loop through in order to output certain variables or create new variables or check whether a variable exists within an array and stuff like that. There's many different uses that you'll find throughout your years of C# programming that arrays come in handy. Anyway, stay tuned for more, and in our next video we will be finally approaching some object-oriented programming with functions. Signing off.